I had finally had my first movie that I'd written done, and nobody knew. And I spent a year out of work. Wow. An entire year where I didn't get a job. And then I was offered a property that nobody else in town wanted to touch because they were sure it was Suixide.
Psycho 2.
Psycho 2. And
so Universal asked you to write it. Did you have a pitch prepared for it?
No.
They just asked you to write it?
It was Richard Franklin, the director, the Australian director, who had the assignment. And he read a couple of screenplays of mine. And he really liked one called The Crystal Tower. And he had me in, and we talked about Psycho 2. And I can't tell you how or why, but he chose me to write it. Now, nobody in town wanted to do it.
Oh, yeah. How do you touch it? It's a masterpiece. Probably one of the best horror movies in the history of cinema.
It is. It's the beginning.
Oh yeah, it's the beginning of horror, really.
Yeah, it's the first slasher that it was so much more than that, but everybody knew they were going to get ripped by the critics for having the temerity to try.
You can't win. It's a winless situation.
And on top of that, it was a cable movie. Oak Communications, look in the credits, you'll see it. And this was just as cable is coming in and just as VHS is coming in. And nobody wanted to do it, but Richard and I talked to you. I said, the only way you're going to get this made as a feature film is if you get Tony Perkins back to play Norman Bates. And Tony didn't want any part of it.
I read that. He didn't want any part of it until he read your script.
Well, then, so what I had to do was try to figure out how to make a piece of actor's bait that was so strong that a great movie star actor would say, I can't turn it down. And Tony blamed Psycho for ruining his career because he had been a romantic lead before that. Shenandoah Valley, he'd been a star on Broadway and Look Homeward Angel.
And then all of a sudden he did Psycho and everybody sees him as that.
And that really took the edge off of being a movie star and turned him more into a character actor. So he had very mixed feelings about it. But what I wrote was one of the great acting parts to come out in the horror genre. Because Norman starts out coming out of the mental institution and he's sane. And he's desperately trying to hold on to his sanity. And of course, the relatives of his victims come back to drive him mad. And at the end of the film, he kills his own mother, and he's totally raving mad. So that is a hell of a character arc.
Right.
It was a real...
And it was a success. It was the number 2 movie behind Return of the Jedi that year.
That's right.
And that really put you on the map, didn't it?
That made me.
That made you.
That made me.
This guy did the impossible.
Yes.
Because without Psycho 2 being a success, they probably wouldn't have made any more.